Swarm is the latest psychosexual thriller about the dark side of stalking, obsession that we're all oddly obsessed about. What adds an extra layer of creepiness and uneasiness to the show is the fact that these are based on true events. At the start of every episode, we get that disclaimer, and they are based on true events. And her being a facsimile of Beyonce, the true events that they're based on are based on stuff that loosely happened to Beyonce, such as her getting bit at a party. Also, we had that fan that ran on stage in 2018 where she was performing with Jay-Z. And don't forget the elevator scene with Solange and Jay-Z in the elevator. All that plays a part in the show, and all that just adds a little something more to the show, a little more heaviness. The entire show itself is a meta commentary about the obsession of fandom, as well as analyzing celebrities online as well as in person, and how that can cross the line, especially in today's day and age. And this show's facsimile of Beyonce is essentially saying this is how the Beehive behaves. And to add on to the similarities of Beyonce, they have Chloe Bailey playing Marissa, and Chloe Bailey is signed to Beyonce's record label Parkwood, and that just adds a little more intentionality to it, because not only is this taking Beyonce stories, they're also taking her artists and things close to her life. And you know, they can't flat out say Beyonce. That's why even in the episode of the documentary, they kind of blurted out a little bit, because Jay-Z and Beyonce lawyers will be on the phone with Amazon like this. Now the story follows the character of Andrea Green, aka Dre. And Dre, our main character, is obsessed with Nyjah, the facsimile of Beyonce, to the point where it is the only thing that she has, along with her sister Marissa. Dre has this unusual attachment to her sister Marissa, who we come to find out was her former foster sister, to the point where Dre's entire life, her entire obsession is based around Marissa and Nyjah. Can we take a moment to appreciate Dominique Fishback? Ever since I saw her in Project Power with Jamie Foxx and then Judas and the Black Messiah, I knew this girl could act. But this show took it to another level. Her performance as Andrea, the eeriness, it made my skin crawl. I don't like watching shows like this, especially with phenomenal actresses or actors who can bring that character out. And Marissa herself living her life, having boyfriends, and we're introduced to her boyfriend Khalid. And I want to talk about Chloe Bailey and Damson Idris' sex scene that had the internet ablaze and Twitter going crazy. Let me not be a creep. Let's get back to the video. But Chloe, I see you. But because of Dre's unusual obsession with Marissa, Marissa isn't able to live her life the way she wants, isn't able to actually have a life because it revolves around Dre. So Marissa decides to give herself some space from Dre, and Dre can't handle that, and she goes into this manic state. And when Nyjah drops her visual album, Marissa kills herself to that album. And as the show goes on and we see Dre's descent into madness and we learn more about her relationship with Marissa, the question is brought up: did Marissa kill herself, or did Dre kill Marissa for leaving her? What the show really explores with the character of Dre is the symbiotic relationship between pleasure and violence. How easy one can go from pure ecstatic joy to pure ecstatic violence. And the disassociation that Dre has with both sides of her also mirrors this disassociation we have with sex and violence, and with that carnal instinct within human nature. And that is brought out in the character of Dre. Dre herself is living through her feelings. Dre isn't necessarily being bogged down by the social conventions of society, so she's able to explore her true carnal feelings, even though she's not able to actually process them in a way that would be healthy. With violence, pleasure, disassociation, the show does a really good job of blurring reality. What's real, what isn't? Does this matter, does this not? Are they the same thing or are they not? Because we're seeing it from the perspective of Dre, and even when she kills her victims, she laughs, then she eats, then she stuffs herself with these things, blurring what she's doing with what really happened, what didn't happen. What does spilling the milk mean? Obviously, she's disassociating with her actions, and she's using other sources of pleasure to spark her neurotransmitter. Whether it's pigging out on junk food, laughing her ass off at things that aren't funny and awkward situations, she is blurring reality and blurring what is real and confusing us, the audience, throughout the entire journey. And that's something Donald Glover does a lot in his work, because even when you're watching his show Atlanta, you can see the influences of Atlanta on this show, because it blurs reality in the same way that this show does. because as we're following her through the first 5 episodes, and in episode 6, that documentary, we're introduced to a whole new cast of people who are supposed to be playing these characters, and then we go back to them in episode 7, and you see how all that makes the sense of reality distorted. What's true? What isn't true? Did any of this happen, or is it all happening? And while exploring that dichotomic relationship between violence and pleasure, we're also seeing the many facets of femininity and womankind. Because throughout the show, the entirety of the show really revolves around the women. They are the driving force of this show, and more specifically, the black women in this show. We have Dre, Marissa, Naija, all representations of a different type of girl. Even though they all are born and raised in Houston and had a similar upbringing when it comes to their social environment, you can see that all 3 of them are on different paths of life. So while Dre herself is psychotic and walking around killing people, she's affecting various people's lives. The choice of making Dre a serial killer really adds to that, because very few times in TV have we seen female serial killers, and even less we've seen black women serial killers. And I want to say, making a black woman a serial killer is actually a big step for equality on film, because now we know that women themselves are multifaceted, and making Dre a serial killer of this proportion, making it seem like just because she's a fan of Beyonce, an overzealot fan, doesn't mean she can't be a smart serial killer who was able to go years undetected and killed a lot of people. So adding that extra layer of nuance, showing a different facet of what it means to be a woman who lacks a way to express or receive love the healthy way, all that adds to diversifying cinema and adding that extra layer of representation. And in the episode with Billie Eilish in that female commune, you can see her calling Dre a goddess, and Dre has to put herself on equal footing with Naija, because ultimately the goddess that Dre thinks Naija is could also be her, because again, they do come from the same background, they just express themselves differently. Naija is a different side of Dre. What if Dre's parents didn't die and Dre was able to cultivate her own talent and find a way to express herself how Naija expressed herself through her music? And because Dre doesn't have that, she sees herself as so distant, and she sees that only Naija can truly speak for her, even though Naija probably won't even write her own music. But Naija's music is able to express in ways that Dre can't. And that's why she resonates with it so well. And that's why she doesn't like people talking bad about Naija's music, because talking bad and shutting down Naija's music is also talking bad and shutting down Dre's emotions and her expression. Because she can't fully express it herself, the music is her expression. And if you talk it down, that means you're also diminishing her expression, her thoughts, and her feelings. And she just can't have that. And in the finale, once Dre becomes Tony and she kills her current girlfriend, kills the ticket scalper, finally makes her way to the stage with Naija and shares in her goddess's presence, and Naija's face transforms to Marissa, and she gives Dre the mic and allows her to express herself, and Dre says, "I love you all." Because ultimately it is the boundary of love that she's teetering. Naija is her expression of love. Marissa is her love. They are the alpha and the omega of her life. And in the final episode, it's titled, and the final episode is called Only God Makes Happy Endings. And those two being the most influential people in her life, the two goddesses that she essentially worships, they're her God and they allow her to express herself. But it asks us the question, the alpha and the omega is the beginning and the end. One of the names for God himself. And in this scenario, the alpha is Marissa. That is when Dre became alive, meeting Marissa, falling in love with Naija together, growing. That is her beginning. And this is the end. This is her dealing with and coming face to face with Naija one final time, seeing Marissa one final time. The beginning and the end, the alpha and the omega, tying to the fact that only God gives happy endings. This level of surrealism adds to the complexity of the character. Is Dre sympathetic? Is she aware of what she's doing? Is she mentally all there? We know for a fact, we know watching the show that she's really not all there. And is she the one to blame? I mean, of course, she killed her. So of course she's the one to blame. And ultimately, does any of it matter? Is it real? Is it fake? If she's caught on stage, does it matter what happened to her? We don't know. Just like that person who ran on stage in 2018 and got tackled before they got to Beyonce and Jay-Z, we never found out what happened to that person. Does that person even exist anymore? Is Dre even alive? Like, all of that is left up in the air. All we know is it doesn't matter to her. She got to meet Naija. She got to see Marissa one final time. She's happy. She's in her most euphoric state and she could die here. Again, the dichotomy of pleasure and pain. I've reached the ultimate pleasure. Naija on stage. I've reached my life's fulfillment. So it doesn't matter if I die. It doesn't matter if they shoot me on the stage and I cease to exist because I have reached the ultimate pinnacle. And she even says in one of the episodes that in death we're all equal. So maybe she killed herself and Naija on that stage.
What happened to her?
Finally making her,
because she kind of just gets in the car and rides off with Naija.
Just like Billie Eilish
but we
was telling
know
her
Dre
in
is
episode
delusional.
5.
And
You
Dre
are a goddess.
I mean,
just
she
like
bit Naija
Naija's a
earlier.
goddess.
What's your interpretation of what happened? Let me know in the comment section below, guys. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. And until next time, binge on.